going to move forward with you. So we're going to be discussing with you basically property management agreements or mandates, so to speak, which are in short and basically contracts between the property owner and a property manager or agent, so to speak, which would set out the various conditions, clauses, and agreements between the two parties in terms of responsibilities and obligations as to how that property will be managed and who will do what, whether it's procurement or whatever the case may be. Now, the point is agents we work closely with agents and they're always contacting us regarding the different types of mandates that they find out there and some of the problems that they bump into. So maybe you can take us through basically how these contracts and mandates sort of overlap and what one can always just look out for in terms of just sort of getting a clear understanding as to what their responsibilities are to avoid any conflict.
Sure. All right. So I think the first distinction that needs to be drawn is obviously between a selling agent and a leasing agent, or a sale agent and a leasing agent, right? Because if these are two very different functions. So we had a talk that last week Thursday over this, and the different mindsets, the different business strategies involved in both. So I think it is crucial to be able to distinguish this two, and as an agent and as a business, an estate agency, to be able to choose your core business wisely, because often doing both is particularly difficult because these are very different animals, right? And some require more attention, some require more admin, some require more time on the ground. So it is just something to bear in mind. So you have an agent that focuses on the sale of a property, and you have an agent that focuses on leasing this property. Now, on the sale of the property, the typical example is that you'll be approached by a seller, which is normally the case, but you do also get approached by a buyer. So now we're already on level 2 distinction, which is who actually gives you a mandate. The seller normally gives the mandate because they own the property and they want to sell the property. But the reality is this is not necessarily always the case. So we work very closely with investment brokers, and investment brokers are actually approached by high-end investors looking for very specific types of property. They are actually being paid by these individuals to go out and source these properties for them so they can run businesses. This is very common in the commercial space. When people are looking for very specific types of specific type of setup, but in the high-end residential space, in the property investment space, also very, very common. And there is an argument to be made that an estate agent can charge the purchaser commission to go acquire a property, and it is being done. Like I said, I work with many agencies that do this. So now that's already the second level of distinction. Is it a seller mandate or a purchaser mandate? What does this look like? What conversations do you need to have? And obviously that's a lot of detail that we don't have time to go into now, but it is something to bear in mind that at some point we might want to start exploring each. So now let's drop it yet another level. Especially when dealing with sellers, which are the most common, then there's little sub-mandates. Now, these are labels that have been given to the mandates. There's no right or wrong name for the particular mandate. And in fact, giving it a label up front often causes massive amount of confusion because people don't quite understand these distinctions. So, for example, you hear a lot about open mandates. You hear a lot about sole mandates. And then you hear exclusive mandates. So a lot of people obviously work under the assumption that a sole mandate and exclusive mandate are identical to each other. The words are interchangeable. You also hear dual mandates and multi-listing mandates, which, believe it or not, are sometimes confused with open mandates. So let's now package these two types. So you've got an open mandate, a dual mandate, multi-listing mandate, right? Now, the open and dual are interchangeable words, right? Dual normally referring to two, but open referring to a number. So what's this about? It's when a seller wants to sell the property, but instead of appointing just you as an agent, the seller appoints multiple agents. again, we need to go into detail here. We need to actually have a session just discussing open mandates and the potential pitfalls. The amount of times, and I'm sure Nick as well, that we've been in court fighting over, but who was the effective cause? I showed him the house. Oh, but I showed him the roof, but it was my signboard. And it causes massive confusion because people don't actually know who was the cause of the sale. And then you've got a seller potentially paying double commission, which you don't want as an agent, because that's great first time round, but will that seller ever come back to you? Probably not, if they had that bitter experience of having paid double commission. And so that open mandate has to be dealt with care. Multi-listing mandate, all that means is that two agents are doing the job that one sometimes does. So this is a commission split. So I get the mandate, but it's in an area that I don't really cover with a lot of vigor. So I approach an agent that's very active on the ground, that has a huge database of purchases, and they go out to market and they link the two, and we share comp. Again, with the investment brokerages I work with, this is very common because the investment brokerage has the purchaser, and we have agents and auctioneers with properties that approach us and go, great, let's share the commission 50-50, but do you mind introducing someone that wants to buy this type of property because we feel that it's ripe for investment? So there's definitely room there for discussion. So now the exclusive sole mandate is quite a funny one because it's the wording of the mandate that's very important. So you have two types here. The sole mandate, which is normally accepted as a sole mandate, is you as an agent are the only one entitled to market my property. But does this exclude the seller from selling the property privately? And that's the difference. So exclusive mandate is when you're really looking at excluding everyone, absolutely everyone. No one can sell this property except that one agent, right? But there are mandates out there that say, listen, I'm only appointing one agent, but I'm not excluding myself as a seller from also attempting to sell privately. And sometimes these are included in sole mandates. The problem is, if people don't understand the distinction, it might very well be that the sole mandate also excludes the seller. And that's why I said it's a label. It's a label because it is confusing. When you hear the word sole, you immediately go, well, one person and one person only. So be very careful with this. It doesn't matter what it's called. You need to read through the mandate and understand the specific wording. So now this is the sales sphere. You see that I already broke it down into 3 different levels. Each one of this needs attention. Now, on the second side of things is the leasing agent. Now, leasing agent, not as many levels, but the reality is that there are 2 primary mandates that one needs to look at. The first mandate is normally called either the managed leasing mandate or non-managed. So non-managed mandate or procurement mandate, right? Now, all this means is that the estate agent has one job and one job only. Find me a tenant. Just find me that tenant, and I'm going to give you money. It's almost like the sale mandate because your function ends as soon as you find that person and you make that connection, right? And normally the fee, I think, is between like 5% and 10% to do something like this. The next one is the managed mandate or the leasing mandate or the management mandate, administration mandate, whatever you want to call it, again, just the label. But this is the managed rental mandate that typically means that you are managing this tenant and making sure that when the tenant calls with a problem, you're there, you inform the landlord, maybe you get a service provider in to go fix the property, you do your inspections, entry inspections, exit inspections, you account to the landlord, you collect rent, you hold it in your trust account, you pay it over to the landlord, you hold the deposit, all those things. These are 2 very different functions. Just because you procured the tenant doesn't mean you have to manage the tenant. And just because you're managing the tenant doesn't necessarily mean that you've procured the tenant. The pitfall here is when people merge the 2 together and create this weird gray area where they don't charge a fee for one thing, only for the other, but then later complain if the managed mandate is cancelled. Now they feel aggrieved because it was cancelled before the lease was up. Again, your wording is very important because you can separate these 2 functions. You can charge 2 fees for these two services. And you can obviously discount one in favor of the other, but then you have to specifically mention so. And you need to specifically have a penalty that if something were to happen to this mandate prior to the end, that maybe your first fee becomes due and payable. So all these type of mandates have to actually be given attention. Each one has little nuances and very specific things and problems and pitfalls, and obstacles, and you name it. But I think first step is just understanding the difference between them and understanding that there is a difference. I think that's actually probably the best way to start.
Right. So thank you very much, Bruno. I can't count the amount of times we heard the word mandate in that one video. But what we will do as we go along, we will basically be breaking down all these type of mandates, and maybe we'll do one video per mandate, and then hopefully everybody will understand the distinctions better. But a very good introduction video for the viewers right now. And then obviously, as the more we clear up all of these mandates, the less obviously, or the fewer sort of.
See, now you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So the fewer conflicts we'll end up we're having between sellers and leasing agents, and obviously buyers were also involved. So thank you very much to our viewers for today. I believe that does bring us to the end of today's 2 questions and answers. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, brother.